What happens when loyalty is tested and the league does nothing? What do you do when the referees allow cheap shots, injuries, and dirty play to go unpunished? What happens when a superstar gets targeted again and again and the system refuses to protect her? You take matters into your own hands. That's exactly what Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, and the entire Indiana Fever did. Because June 17th wasn't just a game. It was war. It was a statement. It was the day the Fever said, "Enough is enough." This is the full story behind one of the most explosive games in recent WNBA history. A revenge game that shook the league, went viral overnight, and may have permanently changed how teams treat Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever moving forward. Let's rewind to May 30th. The origin point of this feud. Indiana Fever versus Connecticut Sun, two rising franchises with young stars and postseason ambitions. On paper, it was supposed to be just another competitive matchup. But by the final buzzer, it had turned into something darker. The Fever didn't just lose that game, they lost 2 players to injuries. And both injuries were caused by the same player, Jacy Sheldon. Sophie Cunningham, one of Indiana's toughest veterans, went down hard in the first half. An awkward collision. Contact that looked way too deliberate. She limped off the floor with an ankle injury. And later, we'd learn she also had a tooth knocked loose. But it didn't stop there. Later in the game, Sydney Colson was diving for a loose ball when Sheldon dove straight into her leg. It bent, twisted awkwardly, and left her screaming in pain. It was a gruesome contact injury. Replay after replay showed Sheldon had no real angle on the ball. It looked like a missile attack on Colson's knee. Here's the thing: no flagrant, no technical, no ejection. The referees treated it like business as usual. Just 2 tough plays in a physical game. But the Fever knew what really happened. So did Caitlin Clark, who watched the entire thing unfold from the sidelines due to a quad injury. She didn't say much after that game, but her body language, the look in her eyes, told you everything. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Now let's talk about Jacy Sheldon, the center of this storm. To really understand the tension, we need to go back even further, to college. Clark and Sheldon were bitter rivals in the Big Ten. Iowa versus Ohio State. Fire versus ice. Clark was the flashy superstar with Steph Curry range. Sheldon was the aggressive defender who made it her mission to shut Clark down. In every matchup, Sheldon would shadow Clark like a bodyguard. Elbows on screens, trash talk during timeouts, constant bumping and jawing. The games were personal, and every foul felt like it came with history attached. That history didn't disappear when they entered the WNBA. It just got worse. So when Sheldon injured not 1, but 2 of Clark's Fever teammates on May 30th, that wasn't just basketball. That was an attack on the family. The Fever may have lost that game, but in the locker room afterward, they made a pact. When we get another shot at them, we're gonna handle it. Enter June 17th. The rematch. The stakes were higher now. Clark was healthy again. The Fever were heating up in the standings. The Liberty had just been taken down. And now, the same Connecticut team that had injured Cunningham and Colson was walking back into Gainbridge Fieldhouse like nothing happened. From the moment the players stepped onto the court for warm-ups, you could feel it. The air was thick, the crowd buzzing. And Caitlin Clark? Stone-faced, focused. Her eyes didn't just scan the court. They burned holes into Sheldon. Everyone could feel what was coming. And then, it happened. Midway through the 3rd quarter, with the Fever trailing by 10, Clark brings the ball up court. Sheldon is defending her close, as usual. Too close. Clark makes a slight move. Sheldon goes for a steal and jabs her finger directly into Clark's right eye. Cameras caught the entire sequence. Slow motion showed it wasn't just a graze. Sheldon's finger connected flush with Clark's eyeball, snapping her head backward. Clark stumbles. She grabs her face. She's squinting, blinking furiously, trying to stay composed. And then, instinct kicks in. She pushes Sheldon away, not with violence, not with intent, just a human reaction to being blinded mid-play. The entire building erupts. Booms echo. Coaches are yelling. Clark is still holding her eye. And then, the whistle blows. Technical foul. On Caitlin Clark. You could feel the shock ripple through the arena. The same player who just got her eye poked, was being punished for reacting. The crowd lost it. Fever players surrounded the refs. And on the Connecticut bench, Marina Mabrey started walking toward the action, and she wasn't coming to play peacemaker. Seconds later, as tensions boiled, Marina Mabrey body-checked Clark to the ground. Full speed, no warning. Just a full-on shoulder-to-chest hit that knocked Clark off her feet. Fans were stunned. The announcers were speechless. This wasn't basketball, it was hockey. Clark hit the floor hard and laid there for a moment, stunned. And guess what the refs did? Another technical foul. No flagrant, no ejection. Same penalty as Clark's reactionary push after the eye poke. The math didn't add up. The favoritism was loud. And Coach Stephanie White? She exploded. In her post-game press conference, she didn't hold back. This has been happening all season. The refs are letting the game spiral. They're not protecting our players. And when you don't do your job, this is what happens. White knew what we all saw, that Caitlin Clark, the face of the league, was being hunted. And instead of protection, she was getting destroyed. But the Fever, they weren't done yet. Not even close. Because watching from the bench was Sophie Cunningham. She had seen enough. She remembered getting injured in May, watching Sheldon walk around untouched. She remembered the eye poke, the body check, the disrespect. So with less than a minute left, and the Fever up big, Jacy Sheldon tried to sneak in one last layup, and Sophie Cunningham saw her moment. She sprinted up beside Sheldon and bear hugged her mid-air, dragging her down hard to the floor. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't basketball. It was pure message-sending energy. Referees assessed a flagrant 2 immediately. Sophie was ejected. So was Sheldon. And the crowd? They weren't mad. They were chanting her name. Sophie. Sophie. That play will go down as one of the most iconic "you're not gonna mess with us" moments in WNBA history. It wasn't dirty. It was controlled retaliation. It was a veteran stepping in when the system refused to do its job. Because here's the truth. Sometimes, when the league won't protect its stars, the enforcers have to. By the final buzzer, the Fever walked away with a dominant 88-71 victory. But that wasn't the story. Clark dropped 20 points and 6 assists. Natasha Howard recorded her 50th career double-double. Kelsey Mitchell added 17. Aaliyah Boston made key plays on both ends. But what fans will remember most is that when things got dirty, the Fever didn't back down. They stood tall. They stood together. And they sent a message to the entire league. You target one of us, you deal with all of us. This win sent Indiana to their first ever Commissioner's Cup final. A massive milestone for a franchise that's been fighting to find its identity in the league. But this was more than basketball. This was about culture, loyalty, respect, and most of all, boundaries. The WNBA is physical. Everyone knows that. But there's a difference between hustle and hunting, between contact and calculated harm. And June 17th drew a line in the sand. Sophie Cunningham's name is blowing up across social media. Her jersey is flying off shelves. Fans are calling for her to be named an all-star. Not just for her stats, but for her leadership. Because she did something most won't. She put her career on the line. She stood on business. And that matters more than anything the box score can show. So if you respect what Caitlin Clark did, if you respect what Sophie Cunningham stood for, then do this. Hit that like button right now. Drop a fire emoji in the comments. And type CC and Spicy Sophie to let the world know you're riding with the Fever. Because this isn't just a team anymore. It's a family. And when that family gets tested, they don't break. They don't fold. They fight.